Hey, it's Zach. On this episode, the great Kevin Arnovitz and I discuss the Bucks and the MVP race. Please take a minute and subscribe so you can get new episodes of the Lowe Post podcast as soon as they're posted. Rate the show. 5 stars would make me very happy, and leave a review. Before we get to today's episode, I want to tell you about another great podcast. Brian Windhorst, friend of the program, and the Hoop Collective. This week, Windy, Kevin Arnovitz, the same Kevin Arnovitz, double dipping, and Kevin Pelton, stats nerd du jour, discuss the impact of Zion Williamson and Ja Morant and whether or not Russell Westbrook can propel the small ball Rockets through the playoffs. You can find the Hoop Collective wherever you get your podcasts. Tired of that 2:30 feeling? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. Let a 5-hour energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of smashing into it. 5-hour energy helps you get through your crazy on-the-go life with 0 sugar, 4 calories, precisely 4 apparently, and a convenient portable size that's the perfect pick-me-up for busy, hardworking people. And now it comes in 2 great extra-strength tropical taste, strawberry banana and tropical burst. Ooh, they are delicious and could take you to a tropical on-the-go experience. Try them both and then go online, shop the number 5hourenergy.com and use the code LOWE, L-O-W-E, my last name, the name of this podcast, to receive a one-time offer of 10% off your order. Go to shop5, that's the number 5, shop5hourenergy.com, use the code LOWE to receive a one-time offer of 10%. 5-Hour Energy, energy on the go.
And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast, where we have hit the 75% mark of the NBA season, which, among other things, means that it's time to get serious about the Milwaukee Bucks' pursuit of 70 wins. And our friend Kevin Arnovitz, frequent guest on the Lowe Post, the ESPN NBA writer extraordinaire, was just in Milwaukee. And timely for us, the Bucks actually lost last night in Miami on the second end of a back-to-back as Bam Adebayo and company held Giannis to 13 points. Mr. Arnovitz, back in Los Angeles, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Always appreciate the I'm well. I forget every time that you do that, so every time it's a surprise. How is Milwaukee?
Milwaukee is lovely. I am a fan of the Milwaukee market. It was ridiculously cold, though I was told it wasn't. And 2 trips to Kopp's Frozen Custard. I did kind of a Wednesday, Friday, working toward the cookies and cream and the butter pecan. But it's Milwaukee's functional. It's good. It's a fun place to watch basketball. That building is nice. The team is interesting. The people in it are happy. It is the happiest place on NBA Earth right now, the Milwaukee Bucks.
Let me ask you this. When you left Milwaukee to come back to Los Angeles, how many people were in the security line at the airport?
Like 1 on Saturday morning. It's like flying out of the 7-Eleven, Zach. It is so easy.
It's the only place where I've ever had in my life 0 people in the security line and the guard being like, no, sir, come on. I want to talk to somebody. Come say hi to me. It was great. So the Bucks are 52-9. They are on pace for 70 wins on the dot, 69.9. The Geeks at 538 give them something based on their remaining schedule, like a 28% chance of reaching 70 wins. And I have to say, I want them to go for it. And by the way, go for it is strong because they're barely playing their main player. Giannis is averaging 30 minutes a game. Middleton is not cracking 30 in some of these games. It's not like they are pressing for 70 wins, which is part of what makes them scary. But we had this debate before Countdown on Friday. It was me and Paul Pierce and Jay Williams and a few other people. And Paul is just still firmly on the side of 73 wins means nothing because they didn't win the championship. And I actually completely disagree. I think the longer we get out in history, the more we will look back on that 73 wins and say, yeah, that's a huge disappointment that Draymond Green punched LeBron in the testicles and they didn't win the championship. And that's a failing, that they did not accomplish their goal. In that sense, it's a failure. But I do think that accomplishment is going to grow in appreciation I already appreciate it. And I think as time goes by, that accomplishment will be respected for what it was as its own separate thing. And my thing has always been, hey, you get X amount of chances at greatness. That's it. Like they're going to come and they're going to go for whatever reason. They're going to come and go fast. If you don't have to really bust your ass, you don't have to play Giannis 45 minutes down the stretch. If you have a shot at it, I say go for it. This is history, man. This means something to me. And that 73 win season for the Warriors still means something to me. So I am on team go for it. I care. I have no idea if the Bucks actually care. I have not asked one person on the Bucks, do you care about 70 wins? Do you think they care?
Only marginally. I think one of the reasons the Warriors cared is they'd already won a title. So it was this additional achievement within the larger realm of their greatness. I think with the Bucks right now, there's just such a focus on this title. I think privately some of them would like to, but not at the expense of sacrificing anything about the 2020 NBA
I'm just saying, if you're at 69 on the last game of the season, play everybody. That's all I'm saying. I don't know who their last game is against. I haven't bothered to check. I don't particularly care. If you're at 68 with 2 games left, 67 with 3, try it. Try until it's mathematically impossible. That's all I'm asking.
The thing is, they are an advanced performance team, and what that means is March 15th is sort of the moment where they want Giannis and all the guys at peak fitness, and there will probably be I would imagine there would probably be a tapering after that, where we're not going to see as much of Giannis between March 15th and April 11th, or for that matter, as much of Chris Middleton or Eric Bledsoe or anybody else. It's just kind of how they're programmed as a team. Like, you don't invest in this stuff and then not follow it. Unless, of course, you want 70 wins, in which case, or 73 wins, in which case, sure, go for it. But I don't have an expectation that they're going to be just a balls to the wall April team. I just don't see it, even if they're flirting with 70.
Well, they're still, I think, like +6 per 100 possessions or +5.5 per 100 possessions without Giannis, which is equivalent to like a top 5 or so point differential for a team. So theoretically, they should be able to taper. I tapered when I was a swimmer. Tapering was great. It meant just easier practices. It was awesome because swimming sucks. They should still be able to win a lot of games.
Swimming's great. I just swam like 3 hours ago.
Swimming is terrible.
Swimming's amazing.
It is the worst.
I'm 84 years old. Is the last thing that I am able to do.
I'll say this. I was a competitive swimmer, and it's just two things. Number one, any sport is more fun with a ball and teammates. And swimming, you have teammates, but it's not like actual teammates. It's just sort of guys sharing the pool with you and you're racing against the other team in their clock. And just going up and down, it's just pain. All it is like pain at various speeds and intervals with various arm and leg movements. It's just pain. It's just, okay.
I think any sport with no people and no devices is amazing and meditative. And it's like, I call it my 30 minutes of sanity.
See, but the other thing, to be great at swimming, and I was not, and I think this is true of tennis and running and any individual sport that is physically taxing in an endurance way. I think you have to have like half a screw loose to be great at those sports. Because I was a distance swimmer, and I was a mediocre to good distance swimmer.
What is distance, by the way, in the context of high school? Because I was never a competitive swimmer.
500
freestyle. I'm a guy who does a mile 3 or 4 days a week. 500
freestyle.
So that's like half. That's 500 meters?
Yeah.
Well, that's nothing.
That was the longest race.
I'm doing 1,600.
Yeah, that was the longest race.
I'm awesome. Look at this. Oh, my God.
So on our team, which was a state championship team every year, I was mediocre. In the scheme of things, I was very good. But the way to get really good at distance swimming is just to sprint. Like, you have to trick your mind into being like, I'm just going to sprint until I can't do it anymore. And then I'm going to slow down and pace myself. Whereas I was a wimp or sane. I'd like to think sane. Like, I'm just going to pace myself out of the gate, because doing the first thing, like pushing myself beyond my limits and sprinting when I have a lot of race left, that just seems like pain, and I don't want to do that. Who's
your NBA? You said you're mediocre. Like, who are you? Like, if you were to apply your NBA analog to high school swimming, who were you?
Oh, like DJ Augustine.
You were the DJ Augustine of the pool?
Yeah, I was a much better water polo player than I was a swimmer. I'm not going to comp myself in water polo, but I was swimming. I didn't have the mentality to be great at it. So anyway, the Bucks.
Now that we've bored your audience.
The Bucks. So you nailed it in this piece. You were there when they beat Oklahoma City by 1,000,000 points. I didn't watch the game. To me, I just saw the score, and it was like when a monster just smushes somebody in a video game and they go flat on the floor. And you wrote this piece about how there's this sort of lingering, like, and Hollinger wrote about this a couple weeks ago, just sort of, why are the Bucks just not overwhelming favorites? They're 52-9. They have the best point differential in the league, like almost by double the runner-up at this point, and one of the best in the history of basketball. Every macro marker pegs them as a gigantic, overwhelming favorite, and yet they are certainly not considered that. I'm not even sure they're considered the favorite, period. I don't even think 538 has them as the number one championship odds right now. And you sort of tried to answer this question of why. And so the answers are obvious, right? They lost in the playoffs last year. Giannis's jumper is still shaky. Suspicion that Middleton is not a classic number two option, blah, blah. We can debate all of those. What I'm interested in is where, Kevin Arnovitz, do you fall on the, are we overlooking the obvious elephant in the room here, which is that the Bucks are going to destroy everybody?
I mean, I don't have any reason not to regard them as the overwhelming favorite other than the sneaking suspicion that teams furnished with guys who've done it before are favorites over teams that don't have those guys. And so, you're talking about LeBron and Kawhi essentially in Los Angeles. And I mean, really nobody else. I mean, I don't know that is there another even remote contender that has, a top performer who, quote, has been there. I don't think the answer is yes. So, and then you add to that, of course, that they're in the East. And I just have a trouble, I just wonder if there was a different name on the jersey, would we even be having this conversation? Is there I'm kind of interested in whether it's rational or irrational, what prompts people to doubt the Bucks? I mean, is it that game 3, you had a team on the rope, so you lacked the killer mentality? Is it that we are more comfortable with the notion of a top performer, like the number one guy being able to pull up from 19? Is there something still, even in this age of, and for that matter, from 3, right? From 24, for that matter. Have we gone from you can't win with the jump shot to you can only win with the jump shot? I mean, that's kind of the irony that I find amusing about this. Like we were told for years that even, to the extent that there was skepticism about the Warriors, it was you can't win a championship with the jump shot. And here we are 5 years later, and the best kind of skeptical doubt I hear expressed about the Bucks is, well, they don't have a jump shot from their best player. So it's just hilarious that in 5 years we've gone from a jump shot as a liability as a primary skill to a jump shot as an absolute necessity.
So when you look at what happened to them against the Raptors last year, when they lost 4 games in a row, what really happened was that they could not score baskets in the half court. And that was the whole series. They couldn't score baskets in the half court. And that's what you're getting at, is that the Raptors were the only team that they faced that could contain Giannis before he got to the rim with Kawhi and with help and get out to those shooters fast enough with enough sort of roaring, frenzied length. And the Raptors are still right now loaded with that kind of length to disrupt those looks, and or they got lucky that Milwaukee shot 31% on catch and shoot threes for the series, or it's 32%. And I think if you talk to the Bucks, they would say, well, that series really came down to forget mental fortitude and experience and toughness and the holes in Giannis's game. That series came down to we shot 32% on catch and shoot threes, and the Raptors shot 39%, and Fred VanVleet had an out of body experience for a game and a half or whatever it was. That and I'm not sure I buy that because they had trouble scoring in the half court the whole series. But that's sort of what you're getting at with the Giannis stuff. I think some of the suspicion also comes down to this. Mike Budenholzer is the best low-hanging fruit coach in the NBA. And I mean that as a compliment. That is not even a backhanded compliment. It's just a compliment. I'm going to come in here, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot a lot of threes because we have this all-world Wilt Chamberlain / Shaq, but also can dribble, but can't really shoot very well. So we're going to surround him with shooting. We're never going to foul because that's dumb if you can help it. We're going to get every defensive rebound, and we're going to protect the rim at all costs and make teams shoot pull-up jumpers on us. And sometimes they're going to make those pull-up jumpers, or sometimes we're going to run into a stretch 5. Even Kelly Olynyk last night gave them problems on pick and pop threes to the point that they had to switch the matchups. Yeah, sometimes that'll happen, but in the aggregate, that's all the low-hanging fruit, and we're just going to win a lot of games that way. The low-hanging fruit is gone in the playoffs. The playoffs is about the high-hanging fruit, and so everything you do that's geared toward like making mediocre players shoot jump shots, well, suddenly those players are better. We're not going to foul. Well, you're facing teams that are less dependent on free throws in a lot of cases or offensive rebounds. And so the playoffs is a different game. It's a matchups game. It's a high-hanging fruit game. So I think some of the suspicion of the Bucks is that a lot of what makes them great in the regular season only carries over somewhat to the playoffs. I think that's fair to a point because the same thing applies almost to every other team. Like there are certain teams that are definitely sort of more classic playoff ready teams. The Clippers strike me as that kind of team. The Raptors last season struck me as that kind of team. But the talent on the other side goes up for everybody. So no matter what you do that works really well in the regular season, it works less well in the playoffs by definition. But I do think that applies a little bit more to the Bucks than it does to a typical contender. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple of questions. When we say that certain teams are better equipped for the playoffs, is that a euphemism for we have a guy who can work in isolation or perhaps off a middle pick and roll, who can then step off for a 19-footer or for that matter, a 24-footer. I mean, maybe it's Kyle Lowry hiding behind a screen. Is that just what we mean by playoff ready? And that, okay, this is a team that relies more on read and react, these sort of wicked reversals. I mean, sure, they run pick and roll like everybody else, but there's a certain, in some ways, one could argue, well, Rick Adelman teams, another coach who really relied on read and react. And Zach, we know how beautiful that stuff was in the regular season. And for that matter, through the first couple rounds of the playoffs.
Those Kings are my all-time favorite.
Oh, me too. Right? And so is that just a euphemism for you better have a Kawhi, you better have a LeBron, and Giannis for all of his genius, and he's running away with the MVP race. And I take issue to anybody who says it's not skill to get where you want to on the floor. I had an interesting conversation with him because, before I started asking him about this line of thinking, one-on-one, and he kind of stopped me. He's like, look, I was stubborn. That's the issue. Like, I'm not going to jump over 5 guys in the paint this
you might.
Forget about it.
You actually might, Giannis. I hate to contradict you about yourself, but you actually might do that.
Right. Now, that's an impulse, right? But I just wonder, when we say is a team playoff ready, are we really saying that they can run ISO from the top when the ballet turns into a tractor pull, when nothing works, because nothing ever works in the playoffs, every possession is a fire drill? Do we just have a guy who can do that? And is there still a collective skepticism that Giannis, for all of his ingenuity and the freakish athleticism and all the things we love about Giannis being Giannis, he doesn't do that in a conventional sense? Is that what we're talking about?
All of what you're saying is, what's plan B? So Giannis can't get to the rim at will, and we face a defense that either through switching or just spot on help and recover rotations is contesting our threes in a way that no one has before. Did Toronto do that? I think partly yes, maybe partly also they just got lucky that the Bucks missed a lot of shots. What's plan B? Is it get to the free throw line? Is it post up more? Is it run more? Is it whatever it is? And they didn't have that last year. So I think part of the answer to your question is partly yes, that is what we're talking about. Having that guy who can be plans B through Z. Everything else goes wrong, you can do that. And I think being overlooked in this conversation is that Chris Middleton has been that guy for a lot of this season. And if you ask the Celtics fans, they get the heebie-jeebies when you bring up Chris Middleton because he torches them in the playoffs all the time. He has had a sensational season, and I think a lot of the Bucks skepticism focuses on him because it's like, well, he's not a number 2 guy on a championship team. The Lakers' number 2 guy is Anthony Davis, and Paul George, that's a number 2 guy. And, I get that, but I also think if you just sort of zoom out, some of these championship teams have just sort of spoiled us. Like, there is no universal template for what a title team looks like. The Raptors reminded us of that last year. And as NBA history goes on, there's going to be more of these sort of Raptors, Pistons, Mavericks, somewhat anomalous teams that aren't actually anomalous because Michael Scottie spoiled us. Shaq Kobe spoiled us. The 80s Celtics and the Lakers spoiled us a little bit. The Warriors with enormous star power spoiled us a little bit. There are other ways to win a title. Those 3 teams I just mentioned, the first Olajuwon team, like Chris Middleton, even some of the Spurs, like Chris Middleton is doing this year, is kind of on par by every statistical measure. Maybe it doesn't pass your eye test, and that's fine. It's kind of on par with like peak Tony Parker on the Spurs teams. And part of that is what kind of number 2 guy you need to have to win a championship is also dependent on who your number 1 guy is. If your number 1 guy is like the 9th best player in the NBA, yeah, you need a really good number 2. If your number 1 guy is maybe the best player in the NBA and someone who is going to go down pending good health and all of this as one of the very, very best ever to do it, that also implicates what kind of number 2 guy. Maybe you don't have to have Scottie Pippen. Maybe you don't have to have Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. Maybe you don't have to have that level of player. And on top of that, I just wonder if all this complex analysis of the Bucks and playoffs and what are their playoff ready team and built this way and that way, I wonder if it all just comes down to, does Eric Bledsoe choke in the playoffs again? If yes, then vulnerable. If no, then they're rampaging to at least the finals.
Right, and then there you go, sort of the plan B. I mean, so a couple of things. I mean, one is, I'm glad you brought up Middleton, and I wrote a bit about this. If nobody's been paying attention, he's almost doubled his win shares per 48 this season. Like, this is a really good basketball player. By every measure. And by the way, it's not like, not a playoff guy. I mean, I don't know. True shooting percentages in the last 2 playoffs of 71.9.
He's torched the Celtics.
And 56.7. I mean, and the other thing is kind of who Middleton is within the context of the evolution of the team. And one of the things I wrote about is when you talk to people who admire Mike Budenholzer but have critiques, one of the things they say is he flexible enough in the playoffs? System-oriented coaches tend to be very faithful to those systems. And, Middleton was a guy when I came across him last year when I, kind of did a piece prior to Christmas. He was a person who was a little frustrated. Now, he wasn't complaining. I mean, he was very intent on figuring it out, but there's certain ball players, and we've talked a lot about this, in past shows, that guys who like want to know where their shots are coming from and how they're going to be administered. It's the difference between people who like to change their plans and people who don't like to change their plans. In the parlance of the, pseudoscience of Myers-Briggs, if you're a J or you're a P. And like Chris Middleton's a J. He's a guy who wants to know what the plan is and wants to know, hey, they're going to call my number. Somebody's going to wiggle a couple fingers in the air, and that means I'm going to get a mid-post set, right? Or, I'm going to get to work in a middle pick and roll, or whatever it is I'm going to get. And generally speaking, that system, since it's been adopted, doesn't afford for much of that. What's really interesting when you talk to kind of everyone around the Bucks, as I did last week, one of the things they kind of volunteer is, it's so great this year, and one of the coolest things has been to watch the staff and some of the players who aren't native to this particular kind of offense kind of come together. Like I was at a game early in the season, Bucks at Houston, and they won that game. How? By posting up Brook Lopez 11 times.
Which they're doing much more this season.
Right.
And by the way, they should do, because it's one of the very effective counters to, I put my center on Giannis. Who do I have left to put on Brook Lopez? And I think when you talk about Bud as someone who doesn't adjust in the playoffs, this is what you're getting at. Against Toronto last year, and against Boston it didn't matter because Boston was falling apart at the seams. I do think it's fair to, I wanted them to get more predatory, to get more vicious, to say, where is the worst defensive player on the Raptors? Okay, let's run something with Giannis to try and get a switch with that guy covering Giannis. And there are some other things they can do against different kinds of personnel that we can talk about. I think when you're talking about what's plan B, I think getting out of the system when the system is bogged down and saying, let's be mean. Let's be cruel. Let's use Giannis like the Cavs have always used LeBron against the Warriors or whoever the team. Find the little guy, find the weak guy. And look, the Raptors don't have many weak guys. Good luck posting up Kyle Lowry. What's going to happen is he's going to steal the ball, fall over, and get a charge call. It's not going to work.
You're not going to post up Anunoby. You're not going to, there's very few guys on
Van Vliet maybe. But I thought that is something looming there as a sort of, when you talk about, well, what does it mean to make adjustments, to be more adjustment-oriented to the playoffs? When your offense is bogging down, as it did in that Toronto series, that's a place where I'm curious to see. And to your point, posting Lopez more this year, I think is a hopeful indication that if push comes to shove, if their backs are against the wall, if they're having trouble, they will sort of engage that mode a little bit more than they did.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think Mike Budenholzer and their other coaches, and for that matter, Pop wasn't like this and Kerr isn't like this. I mean, I think there are certain coaches who are never going to hunt mismatches as a matter of course, but I'm with you, and you're already starting to see it. I mean, Middleton's improvement this year is not, at age, what is he, 27? It's not like, he grew an inordinate number of skills. It's, hey, this is a collective experiment. And what did the staff do? And Bud and Chris, and every kind of came together and said, you know what? We can afford this. Like, there's nothing sacrosanct against or a violation of the holy system that precludes getting Chris 8 possessions to 12 possessions a game where, he's kind of, he's being Chris Middleton, I mean, he's sort of deliberately working against a matchup and that's how he sort of sees the game. And yeah, the guy's got vision. He's not going to just ram it down and it's not going to turn into a mid-range fest. And again, as you say, with Lopez, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, to me, they've missed Brogdon a lot less than I thought they would. I thought they need that perimeter attacker, and the thing I've always loved about Brogdon is just his absolute determination to get to the hole in a league where that's not as common as it used to be for guards. And Bledsoe's been pretty good. I'm with you. I think, if the skeptics have a point where, hey, we can't say empirically they're not the overwhelming favorite, there's just something that doesn't smell right here, I would say that most likely Bledsoe is, I think, their best case where, and I do wonder what are the contingencies, when or if, Bled just doesn't have it on a given night, or, to me, he's the starting pitcher who's kind of taking the cap off, walking around the mound in the 4th inning when he's getting beat up. It's like, what happens at that moment? Do you go to the pen? Do you, what do you say to moderate it? And look, maybe he's fine. I mean, watching Bledsoe defensively, you talk about this historic defense. He is such a key part of it. I mean, I don't like to drag Bledsoe because I just think I like to focus on all the things he does. But there are moments in a conference final against a team like Toronto where, even if it only happens on occasion, that's the moment it happens when what he doesn't do becomes an issue.
No matter how good you are at lots of stuff, if the other team decides they don't have to guard you and they don't, you become a liability. It's that simple. And that's what happened to Bledsoe in the playoffs last year and that series last year. And I'll tell you what they're going to do if that happens again. They're going to go to the bullpen. They're going to go to George Hill because George Hill has been sensational this year. He's shooting 50% from 3. But I'm glad you brought up both Lopez and Bledsoe because they're connected in this sense. You asked before, what does it mean to be a, quote, more playoff ready or whatever team? And we talked about the ISO score and the plan B. I think what people are also looking at is Lopez is still the point of their defense, as great as he is, that because of their scheme, we can pick on him a little bit. Pick on him in this sense. He wants to drop back in the paint, way in the paint, on every pick and roll. So what does that expose? It exposes off the dribble threes for point guards and wings who can shoot them, because if that screen hits, they're going to have space. Well, how do we counter that? The screen doesn't hit. Eric Bledsoe gets around the screen, and you feel him breathing on your neck literally when you try to raise up for that jump shot, and so you don't. And it becomes a pull-up 2 or something much less damaging. But on the back end of that, if you have a pick-and-pop big, that kickback pass, that becomes a problem, because either that's open or you send a third guy flying at let's say, Marc Gasol. You send a third guy flying at Marc Gasol off the catch, someone else is open. And that's how the Raptors turn the series. And if you rewatch Game 5 in the 4th quarter, they just found Brook Lopez everywhere they could find him. And the Bucks started to switch because they didn't know what else to do. And Kawhi Leonard hit threes over Brook Lopez on switches. And so you look down the roster of Eastern Conference teams. Let's leave the West aside for a second. Say, okay, who has the ability to really hurt them that way? Well, Gasol is still looming. I assume he's going to get healthy, and they're just giving him
and Serge to some extent.
Right. The Celtics with Tice, I don't think that worries them. The Heat, not unless they play Leonard or Olynyk, and if they're playing Leonard and Olynyk, you've won. Because and you can maybe play with the matchups and put Lopez somewhere else if need be. That's harder against the Celtics because they don't offer any easy perimeter guys to guard. Like last night, I don't know if you watched Bucks Heat, but Olynyk came in, did serious damage, and they moved Lopez to Iguodala. That's survivable. They put a smaller guy on Olynyk. Pacers, no. Sixers, no. So, I mean, the Sixers, the theoretical version of the Sixers.
Theoretical Horford, right?
The theoretical version of the Sixers, which I'm as someone who picked them to make the finals, I'm becoming less and less hopeful that the theoretical version will ever exist. They bring other complications that we can talk about, but I'm not, it was Gasol last year, and a lot of that was also Kawhi, making just crazy pull-up shots and really good pull-up shots. So, but that's the other thing where is your defense personnel proof? Is your scheme personnel proof? And people look at Lopez and say, well, not really. But A, it takes really good personnel on both sides of that pick and roll. And B, if Bledsoe can stay in the game and stay in the series, it becomes harder.
Right. And this is the great trade-off is Bledsoe. It's funny. We usually think of it's funny because we usually think of the big man as the eraser, right? The Hibbert, the verticality you're going to meet when the guard dies on the screen. What's so interesting about the Bucks defense is that the guy who erases the mistakes is Bledsoe. I mean, how many teams have the guy at the point of attack who's actually can erase mistakes or, mitigate personnel problems, as you say? And I mean, look, I don't know. I mean, the fact that we're sitting here talking about the Milwaukee Bucks historic defense as having vulnerabilities is just evidence that every NBA defense has vulnerabilities. There isn't a defense out there that you can't say, oi, if you present them this particular, whether it's a matchup problem, whether it's a schematic wrinkle, whatever it is, you're going to expose certain vulnerabilities on their, in their scheme. And I think, I'll take the Bucks vulnerabilities and sort of the complications that come with Lopez and the way he drops over any other vulnerability in the Eastern or Western Conference.
I would agree. I think Toronto could still be an interesting Lowry Gasol pick and roll is where they would go a lot. I think Boston is sitting on that lineup where, if you're going to guard Lopez with a smaller guy anyway, or you feel comfortable doing that, Boston would not. I think they would want one of their wings or someone on Giannis, and so Tice would guard Lopez if they play Tice. But if you want to really stretch him out, like Tice is great as he is, and he's having a nice 3-point shooting season, they're not worried about Tice pick and popping them out of the playoffs. Boston is sitting on that Smart, Walker, Brown, Hayward, Tatum, all small lineup that maybe I don't know if Brad just doesn't like it, doesn't trust it, or he's just sitting in his back pocket for, let's wait until the playoffs. But yeah, look, every team has weak points. It's not a shot at Lopez at all. Lopez has been unbelievable. He's in the Defensive Player of the Year semi-conversation. At least this is how you have to think about the Bucks when you think, how can you? This is why we're talking about them, because the whole league is looking at them saying, well, how do we have hope? How can we pick at them? People, do you ever feel like ticketing websites make getting to the event difficult on purpose? It's as if they're so big they can get away with not caring about the customer experience, which is the only thing they should care about. With millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves there's a better way. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web. You only need to go to one place, not 10 secondary market sites. And then it rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10 and displays them on a very easy-to-use interactive seat map. Green dots mean good deals, red dots, maybe not as good. Every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. That's important. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. It's by far the easiest way to find tickets. SeatGeek will even give you $10 off your first purchase. Wow. All you need to do is use our promo code. Download the SeatGeek app today and use promo code Lowe, L-O-W-E, my last name, for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code Lowe, and bam, $10 off your first purchase. The other thing about Giannis is, and Toronto hurt them with this last year too, he's not LeBron as a passer, and that's obviously not really a
kind of an unfair standard,
knock.
Zach.
But he didn't react super well to hard double teams last year, or like unpredictable help, or like help that came to him when he was spinning and a little blind to it. And I'm sure we will see teams mix up that kind of stuff and say, beat us with the pass. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he can do it, because he is a very good passer. He's become a very good passer, but he didn't react well in some circumstances to that last year.
Cherry picking granted, there is a play in the third quarter against OKC the other night where Giannis is doubled, exactly what you're talking about, on the left block. And he finds Connaughton in the weak side right corner in a way that I have no explanation for how he saw it and how he timed it and how he ultimately threaded the needle. It was so ridiculous. And I think Connaughton missed the shot. But it was something I kind of went to the game to look at. Having the conversation with him 24 hours before, I'm not going to jump over 5 guys, right? I'm like, all right, OKC's going to double him tonight. I'm fairly certain of that. That's not a reach, and I want to see how I'm going to watch, and again and again, like he's better at it. Now again, the pressure of the defense, it creates a situation where the impulse of the guy who has been passing beautifully out of double teams all winter, just now he wants to jump over 5 guys, and we'll see. I mean, so much of what we're talking about is can Giannis do X? Can Paul George do Y? And when you talk about these primary players, it's really a question of impulse. I mean, they all have a ridiculous repertoire of skills. It's how do you apply it? I mean, and listening to kind of Giannis say that is, this now gives me something new to watch. Like, he's going to encounter schemes similar to what Toronto threw at him last season. And what are his impulses at that moment? The deeper in the series and the closer the games get. And I think if the impulses are good, I think they're overwhelming favorites. I think it's ridiculous that they're not regarded, especially coming out of the East. I mean, talk about the Lakers or Clippers. I mean, they're going to have arguably harder second round series than the Bucks will probably encounter in the conference finals. Although I am becoming a big believer in both Toronto and Boston. I mean, those are fun conference finals. I'm looking forward to the Eastern Conference Finals a great deal.
The other thing with Lopez, and I'm glad you brought up Connaughton, who I think is underrated and still a little bit underutilized by Bud. The other thing they can do and have done is take Lopez off the floor more. If it ever really becomes a problem, they could just play Giannis at center, or this Giannis Marvin Williams thing, whoever is the center. I mean, usually Giannis has been guarding the centers lately. Ilyasova has mostly been excised from their rotation, which I think is I don't trust Ilyasova in the playoffs. I just don't. I know that I'm a little lower on him than most people. I just don't trust his foot speed. I don't trust his jumper as much. But they can go to these Giannis at center lineups, which they've leaned a little bit more into this year. Obviously they have both Lopez twins, so they can play a traditional center the whole game. Both those guys are good players. And again, in the East, they may not run into a matchup period that troubles the Lopez twins, on defense, but they can go that way with Giannis at center if they want. And I think that's when the name Brogdon comes back into the conversation for me, because then you need an extra perimeter guy, and you look at those lineups and it's like, yeah, Bledsoe, you just make it up. Bledsoe, Hill, Middleton, Giannis, give the 5th spot to whoever, Wes Matthews.
Do you trust DiVincenzo yet?
Oh, I'm glad you brought up DiVincenzo. Yes, I trust DiVincenzo.
I'm feeling it, man. I'm just feeling it.
DiVincenzo can play. DiVincenzo can play. He's a fantastic rebounder. He's a very instinctual player. He's really, really smart. And his shot, although it comes and goes, I think it looks good, and I semi-trust it. And I think basically, like, that's what you're betting on with Brogdon, and they bet correctly so far. It's not just the added depth, and they go 12 deep in good players. I argued this last week. I think every single player on their team is better than they were last year. Everyone. And that includes Brook Lopez, who's shooting 28 or 29% from 3, because I think he's better defensively. I think his floor game is better. He's making like off the dribble passes and stuff. I think his post game is better. I think DiVincenzo has gone from out of the rotation to like spot starter / maybe their 6th man. Everyone on this team is better. And so when you go back and look as why is there lingering doubt? Well, the lingering doubt is are we overreacting to 4 straight losses to a really great team, a championship team, as the Bucks sort of went through some growing pains, and Bledsoe in particular went through some growing pains? Are we overreacting to that? Part of how the collective we might be overreacting to that is sort of wrongly assuming stasis for everybody else from that moment to this one, whereas I think everyone on the team is better, period.
Right. And I wrote this in the piece. We tend to, that stasis, it's just we actually act as if when a team is bounced out in May that they somehow are the same team that arrives 11 months later, and it's just ridiculous. Like this. And also, I mean, here's what I would say. Generally speaking, I think there's a great overlap in the Venn diagram among people who say are skeptical of the Bucks and people who generally rightly subscribe to certain tropes about NBA basketball. For instance, every team that ever got there kind of had to take their lumps early. Like, going back to the Pistons had to get, bumped around by the Celtics in the 80s. And I kind of grew up watching those series. And then the Bulls kind of got, kicked around by the Pistons, and then they had a moment where they kind of prevailed over their tormentors. And that, I mean, there are very few teams that just
That just warriors their way to the first championship.
Like, so if we're writing the storybook of the Milwaukee Bucks and the confetti is falling in Milwaukee this season in this June, we will talk about the Toronto series as being one of the great catalysts for their growth. I mean, that's what generally happens. Teams get embarrassed, or they run up against their worst instincts, or they're not flexible and, perhaps on the bench, or, they don't find the right shots for the right guy, and all of that happened. And then you basically have 11 months to say, okay, what are the corrective measures here? And all you can judge a team on between October and April is, are they putting those prescriptions in place? And the answer is, when you watch this team, as you and I do a lot, I'm seeing all of these deficiencies attacked. I'm seeing, again, these more conventional sets for guys who need who need 4 minutes of conventional basketball here and there. I'm seeing some of the depth issues. As good as they were last year off the bench, they've gotten better. And so, yeah, I'm a defender, and it's ridiculous to get red in the face about, okay, how dare you doubt this team? I'm bullish because, again, I'm seeing the things that I would have wanted to see. If you asked me in October, what do you want to see from the Bucks that would allay any fears or skittishness you have about their playoff prospects? I'm kind of seeing that.
I'd like to see Giannis shoot a little better from the foul line.
Yeah. By the way, he took a tech the other day. I guess they were up by 30 maybe.
I mean, he is shooting. You know what? He's down to 63% at the line. That makes me a little bit nervous. To my point and your point about everyone being better, here's just one example. Chris Middleton pick and rolls. You ready for this? I looked up the tracking data on this. Last season, 0.98 points per possession anytime Middleton shot out of a pick and roll or passed to a teammate who shot right away. That's bad. 1.09 points per possession, period, like featuring everything that happens after it. This season, his pick and roll volume is a little up. 1.08 points anytime he or his teammate shoots. 1.22 points per possession. Just monster numbers from Middleton, and he's running a lot more of them too. Or not a lot, but a little bit more. He's having just an absolutely fantastic year. The other thing I would say, I'm just curious, like when they play Philly and they put Embiid on Giannis, or whenever they face a team that puts their center on Giannis, I do sometimes wish they would use Giannis as the screener and pick and rolls a little bit. Like, get that guy, like, don't let Embiid just load up on a runway for Giannis, but like make him move and cover a ball handler just for a second so Giannis has a little window of space. That's another adjustment that I'd like to see them do more. But they just may not face a series where that really, unless they face Philly, where they're really sort of worried about, okay, this big center is actually sort of making Giannis sweat a little bit.
Right. I mean, or do you have any doubt that if employed that way, that Giannis isn't the best diver and rim runner in the league? I mean, off the screen, I mean, it's kind of terrifying to think about. I mean, look, we said that for years about LeBron. I mean, I remember all of us, like, when are we going to see the Wade LeBron pick and roll with LeBron as the screener? And by the way, it produced insanely efficient offense.
Here's where I am on the Bucks on March 3rd, 2020, as the world slowly spins until it's ending. I'm going to pick the Bucks to get out of the East, but I think Toronto or Boston is going to give them a series. I don't think they're going to cakewalk through the East. I don't think Miami can give them a series, regular season success notwithstanding. Philly, I picked them to make the finals before the season. Am I locked into that pick? Does that mean I have to pick them now?
No, I don't.
How does this work? Right now, I'm picking the Bucks to make the finals when the playoffs start. But I do think one of those teams, I think those teams have the personnel to make them sweat more than the 10-game differential in the standings would indicate, and that there will be a moment of stress in either one of, like, it has to be the conference finals it's looking like, because those teams are going to go 1, 2, 3. So I guess what I'm saying is in the conference finals, I think Milwaukee will have a moment where they are seriously tested, and if things go wrong in that moment, if we see last season's Eric Bledsoe and George Hill slumps at the same time, if X, Y, and Z, I think they could be more than slightly vulnerable. But right now, I think they come out of the East. I think they're the overwhelming. Let me repeat this more loudly for the Bucks fans. Overwhelming favorites to come out of the East. But I think one of those teams has the goods to push them.
Yeah, I think
it sounds like you're not even there. It sounds like you're expecting
look, I'm not going to listen. all season long, the Raptors have demonstrated they have more defensive creativity than any team in recent memory. I mean, they have an ability to respond with tailored solutions for difficult matchups. And I suspect in a 7-game series, they're going to figure that out at least 2 games. And then let the chips fall where they may. And it's going to be, by the way, it's going to require Fred VanVleet going crazy or Norm Powell just becoming this, this multi-purpose guard who can attack and just completely scramble. And then again, when you go back to Boston, I love the amount of ground that defense covers, like fluently with absolute promptness. Like I've enjoyed watching the Celtics defense. I love how they impact the ball. Like I love how they scram, they rotate out beautifully. I mean, it just reminds me of like a really good kind of Spursy defense from back in the day. It's on a string, all those cliches. I just think
Boston's really good.
And they're really good. And then again, what Tatum is doing, like I love that he's working, much less off the, off isolations and now they're kind of, he's become a dribble handoff pick and roll guy who, by the way, if you need to, in a fire drill can still be your guy with 6 seconds on the clock.
And Kemba's a pull-up 3 guy, obviously over the Lopez drop. Now on the other side, like I said, if Kemba's on the floor, and it's struggle time a little bit for the Bucks or it's close, like I want them to give Giannis the ball or put him in a pick and roll one way or the other and say, where is Kemba Walker? Hunt him down. And then look, I also think the Celtics are really good. The Celtics have proven they are really, really good when one of their 4 best players, Hayward, Tatum, Brown, Kemba, doesn't play. Like when Kemba's off the floor and it's like Smart, it's their starting lineup, but essentially Smart in Kemba's place, they are really hard to score on.
God, they're good defensively. By the way, how much fun, also the teams, this will be the 3rd year in a row if that matchup surfaces that I kind of like, I wouldn't call it a rivalry, but it's been a very interesting chess match to watch. So here's speaking of Boston, the flip side of are we overreacting to 4 straight losses to a championship team last year? Did we also overreact or should we check ourselves on so Milwaukee sweeps Detroit, that was not a team. Blake didn't play. They're not a worthy playoff opponent. And then they rampage Boston 4-1, winning the 2 in the Garden, in TD Garden to go up 3-1. Just end the Celtics as we know, as they were last year. Did we give them maybe too much credit for that? Like that Celtics team was kind of falling apart. Marcus Smart told me on this podcast a couple months ago that after they lost game 2, he could kind of feel the team splintering and knew it was going to be over. So I think if there's skepticism, some of it stems from, well, did they really do much in the playoffs last year? Like really? And I think, that it's interesting where you come out on, are we making too much of the 4 straight losses to the Raptors, or did we make too much of the first 2 rounds? I think both those things honestly could be true. Yeah, I mean, I would say that Milwaukee has something to do with the ultimate disintegration. I mean, I know they were falling apart at the seams, but by the way, they also, if I recall correctly, dominated a game 1, did they not? I was working the other series.
The Celtics won game 1.
I do think 20. The Bucks had a very prominent role in shoveling the dirt on the 2019
No
Celtics.
question. And that's what I was so impressed with how they went to Boston and just drilled them in those 2 games. I was at both those games. It was a very impressive performance. Hiring is challenging, or so I hear. I've never actually hired someone. But there's one place you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart, a place where growing businesses connect to qualified candidates. And that place is ZipRecruiter.com/LowePost, the name of this podcast. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job sites. One-stop shopping. With their powerful matching technology, ZipRecruiter scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invite them to apply to your job. You can even add screening questions to your job listing so you can filter candidates and focus on the best ones. ZipRecruiter is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That's 4 out of 5, 80%. If you shot 80% at the foul line, that's pretty damn good. And right now, to try ZipRecruiter for free, my listeners can go to ZipRecruiter.com/LowePost. That's ZipRecruiter.com/LOWEPOST. ZipRecruiter.com/LowePost. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Sometimes for inspiration, you just have to look up. For more than 60 years, the Goodyear blimp has fueled greatness on the gridiron by providing aerial coverage of some of the most legendary moments in college football history. When the Goodyear blimp rises above a stadium, it inspires players to reach higher and rise to the challenge of the game's biggest moments. Now it's your turn to go further with Goodyear. Discover tires made to rise above the rest. Learn more at Goodyear.com. Goodyear, more driven. You've already telegraphed your answer to this. You do not buy into the idea, it's burbling, Kevin, that the MVP race is open.
There are a lot of good ball players. I just think there's one who, I mean, I'm not going to say that like LeBron James doesn't have a claim, or, I mean, by the way, I think Anthony has been fantastic this year. And you know,
I assume you're talking about Carmelo Anthony.
Yes. AD is, I mean, just because I get to watch him most nights now, I mean, he's been, I don't know that I'm going to put him second. I mean, he's missed some time.
Oh, come on, Kevin Arnovitz.
All right. But, you know, I mean, can someone make the case that Giannis isn't the MVP?
I got news for you. I went through the thought exercise of trying to make it in the lead up to this podcast because I really wanted to kind of make it just to be a little bit of a smart ass. You can't really make it. The only case is that the Lakers are awful without LeBron. They are plus 11 with LeBron on the floor, plus 10.5 per 100 possessions, and minus like the Lakers, the alleged juggernaut, become, I don't know, the Pistons or something without LeBron. But I just don't. First of all, the Bucks are plus 17 per 100 possessions with Giannis on the floor, which is just straight up comedy, and plus 5.5 without him. So yes, they are good without Giannis. But the gap between those two numbers is about the same, 11.5 for Giannis, about 12 for Bron. And I don't think it's like any less quote unquote valuable to take a good team and make them like historically supernova running over you terrifyingly great than it is to take a mediocre team. And I'm not saying that's what the Lakers are without LeBron. The numbers say that, but obviously there's all sorts of rotation issues and who is AD playing with and all this. But to take a mediocre team and make them very good, I don't think one is less valuable to the other than the other. And to say that the LeBron side of that is more valuable than the Giannis side is to really sort of, in effect, punish Giannis for having more good teammates, more depth, better coaching, whatever it is you think he has that buttresses those numbers when he's off the floor. And like, I just can't go through life making decisions like, what if it's Giannis's fault that the rest of the team is awesome or really good at least? Like, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah,
statistically, you can look at whatever number you want, including the updated real plus minus leaderboard that just came out and everyone had been citing it as the piece of evidence for LeBron. Well, now Giannis is number one. There just isn't a stat. There just isn't. Other than that on off, like all the advanced numbers, all the traditional numbers, there just isn't one. Statistically, the guy's having one of the very greatest seasons in the history of the NBA.
Yeah, I did my little basketball reference, player comparison, lineup all this. There's just nothing here. I mean, I would be cherry picking.
Giannis is number one in everything.
From like a very large, like one of those craned carts that you use to pick cherries. It's like created in a German lab.
My daughter wants to pick cherries.
That's the level of cherry picking I'd have to do.
Can you pick cherries? Like, can I go to a farm? Can I go to a farm and pick cherries? Because she's now obsessed. We've picked apples because every person in New York City thinks apple picking is like the most fun weekend activity to do. I think it sucks. I drive an hour and a half through traffic in a rent-a-car to go to a farm somewhere, wait in line to buy a stupid bag, and then go pick apples. And then I come home with a bag of apples. What am I going to do with 30 apples? I don't know how to cook anything. Someone's going to make a strudel, and then there's still going to be 15 apples. Picking apples is dumb. I hate it, and I never want to do it again, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Picking peaches? Okay, that's fine. I don't really know what like a peach looks like in the wild. I'm kind of interested in that.
Having come from Georgia and South Carolina, no, it's tedious. My general rule, Zach, is unless it's legitimately charitable work, like working on a home for Habitat on a Saturday.
Well, why do you have to
I'm
make
against
me sound
my
like
general
now?
I do not perform labor for free if it doesn't like actually benefit a human being.
I just don't get what's fun. So there's an apple on a tree. I reach up my arm and pluck it off the tree, and now it's my apple? That's the whole thing? That sucks. I drove an hour and a half to do that, and now she wants to pick cherries. I don't even know where you can pick cherries. I don't want to get on my computer and Google, where do I pick cherries near New York? Cherry picking near New York. I don't want to do it. Maybe I hope they're in some season where we can't do it.
No, you go out to like Yakima, I think. They've got apples too, but I think like Washington State is where you do your cherry picking.
We couldn't use all the apples. They just rotted. 5 of them just rotted in our stupid drawer. But now she wants to go cherry picking, which is fine. She gets to do that. If she wants to do it, we'll go out in the nature and pick the fruits.
I'm not performing uncompensated labor. I'm not going to be a farm intern. Is generally my thing.
I do want to take a moment to just appreciate LeBron, though, because although he's not going to win MVP and does not deserve to win MVP, he is having what he is doing is just absolutely bonkers. So here's the thing. LeBron is now up to 58,239 career minutes. That ranks third all time. He is now third all time. That's regular season plus playoffs. He is now third all time, full stop, in minutes played. This season, he has passed the following players: Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, Dirk Nowitzki. He is now third, trailing only Karl Malone and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. By the end of next season, assuming good health and a decently long playoff run this season, he will pass Karl Malone and move into second all-time in minutes played. And he may well be still, when the chips are down, the best player in the NBA. Now, I'm not sure, but I'm saying when the chips are down, when it's playoff time and you got to create that bucket like we talked about, he may still be the best guy in the NBA. He is having his best post-up season ever. Can I read you some numbers, Mr. Arnovitz?
Please.
Points per post-up when LeBron shoots or the guy one pass away shoots. And there's nothing better in the NBA than being one pass away from LeBron in the post. That's like, I might be able to make one basket if you gave me enough tries. 1.267 points per possession. That, you can't, I mean, that just breaks database. That's not a real thing. Among guys who have posted up, at least 25 times this season, that's number 2 in the NBA, behind Bojan Bogdanovic, my Croatian friend. Who's at 1.347 and about 25% of the volume. Points per possession. So what do the Lakers score on any possession when LeBron posts up? So it could be 2 passes away, 3 passes away. Could end up not being a relevant part of the possession, but we count it anyway. 1.413 points per possession. Do you know where that ranks?
Top 3.
1.
Yeah.
Turnovers. Only 4.5% of LeBron's post-ups have ended in a turnover. Of 118 guys who have posted up 25 times, that's the 5th lowest. The guy is just such a, it's not even fair. And what he did this is fresh in everyone's mind because of these 2 recent games against the Pelicans. Game 1, all right, let's try Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday's feisty. He gets under people's skin. But, oh, no, LeBron's just going to put him in the basket and dunk. Okay, guys, so that didn't go well. Game 2, we'll try a little bit of Ingram. No, we'll try a little bit of Josh Hart. That doesn't work. And he's just overwhelming everyone you put in front of him. And it's layups, it's dunks, or it's double teams and threes. And it's never been as great as he's been since he got a post game, which was really in the first championship season in Miami when he really became a post threat. This is the best he's ever played one-on-one. It's the best he's ever looked. It's the most in control he's ever looked. It's the reads are perfect every time. And he's just steamrolling dudes. Like, yeah, every once in a while he'll settle for that, sexy looking fallback jumper, which looks awesome when it goes in and is still not a great shot. But for the most part, he's just seeing Drew Holidays and Josh Harts and Brandon Ingrams and whoever else you want to put on him and saying, okay, I'm going to put you in the basket unless you send 2 or 3 guys running at me and then someone's getting an open 3. It is absolutely extraordinary what he's doing considering the mileage on him. It's just extraordinary. And I feel bad. I don't feel bad, but it feels like when you look at it and you consider his age, it feels like it should be an MVP race. And when you look at the Lakers in the standings, it feels like this should be a race. And it's just not, but that doesn't take away from just what we are seeing every night from LeBron is it's unprecedented. I mean, we talk about, it's just no one has ever done this before.
I know it's not as if he hasn't played point, but kind of one of the fun things about the season is watching him. I mean, now it's not just de facto, it's de jure. I mean, he is the point guard of that team. And by the way, in related news, he leads the league in assist percentage.
And assists. Just plain old assists.
Which, by the way, it speaks to your post up in sort of perchance, with one player away. He controls a possession in a way that, apart from, I think, Chris Paul, there's nobody who exerts both his cerebral capacity and his physical capacity as a combination on a possession like LeBron, and watching him in the half court has just become, and by the way, with really good, but I don't think flawless accompaniments. I mean, obviously AD is a monster. I mean, Danny Green's a guy you want on the floor. He's sort of perfect as a pressure release, but just watching him master the point and be that guy, it has been so much fun on a regular basis.
He's been crazy. Last thing on Giannis, the other thing I forgot to say that I'm curious about when push comes to shove is how much can he play? Because the Bucks, I mean, this year hasn't been an issue because the Bucks just aren't playing anybody. But, even in the playoffs last year, they were a little bit hesitant to really extend him, both in terms of how many consecutive minutes he plays and then how many total minutes he played. Like, he played over 40 minutes twice in the whole playoffs, and one of them was 40 minutes and 32 seconds in Game 6 against the Raptors when they were eliminated, 44 minutes in the double overtime game in Game 3, so that kind of counts. All of these guys, all the great ones, at some point they have a 45-minute out of 48-minute game in them, or 2 or 3. And I don't know. I mean, I really haven't asked the Bucks coaches or anything about this because I'm not that it's a sensitive issue, but I am curious of is that sort of still the case? Is that sort of their de facto Giannis? That's just how much he's going to play?
I mean, I know there are a team that believes, in measuring the effectiveness per minute, and there's a certain point where a guy tails off. I'm also wondering, and I'm kind of looking it up right now, in terms of playoffs, I mean, how many do they have a lot of? I mean, they had basically 4 blowouts against Detroit. I'm looking at a 3 out of 4 blowouts. Actually, they lost in a blowout, so they had 1 close game against Boston. They had a blowout in Game 2 against Toronto. They had the double overtime game, another blowout by Toronto, and then 2 close games. So they only played, you can say, 3.5, 4 close games in the playoffs last year.
36 minutes in Game 5 and 40 and change.
That's low. I mean, the 5 is the game to look at, right? Do I win foul trouble though? Do I remember a foul out? Right, a controversial foul out.
He did not foul out in any of the games against the Raptors. He had 4.
He did have 5 in that Game 5. Just FYI.
I'm curious.
And he played 39.
Yeah, it's not nothing. It's just that, sometimes you just want your guy to, LeBron will play 46 minutes. He's played 48 minutes before. He will play the whole game. And some guys just aren't kind of not wired. Some guys just, they fatigue differently or they play so hard. I mean, I think the Bucks thing with Giannis is he plays so hard every second he's on the floor. There aren't the possessions where he's just sort of hanging on the wing doing nothing on either side of the ball. He plays full throttle all the time, and for him, for whatever reason, 6 to 8 minutes is different than 6 to 8 minutes for a lot of these other guys. It takes a different toll on him, and I just, it'd be a handy thing to have. Maybe it's just not feasible. It's just one thing I'm curious about. That's all. Where are you going next?
Me?
Yeah,
I'm going to Boston for Sloan. I have a very fun panel that I designed.
They haven't postpone that one yet.
No. I'm gonna rough it.
Too late. Well, I will see you there. I'm getting on an Amtrak train. If I'm getting on public transportation, and going to NBA games, I'm going to a conference. So that's so I'll be getting on a train and heading up to Boston. I will see you there, and we will break bread there and watch some hoops. Mr. Arnovitz just broke a big story on the Clippers arena pursuit. Among many other things, writing about the Bucks last week, and appears across our platforms and does just absolutely stellar work. Kevin, thank you for taking a little time.
Hey, thanks for having me.